Hello. If you've already watched the introductory video, then you know that I'm Jesse Lara and I'm the creator of Cubic Chess. And today we are going to be discussing the rules in detail, and if you have any questions, they will probably be answered in this video. If not, please leave a comment here at YouTube or on my website www.cubicchess.com. So in your packet you probably received a set of rules, something like this, maybe half this size in a booklet form. First page, not really important. Second page, now this shows the setup. Okay, so let's just go through that just for a second here. Okay, if I'm setting up my cubic chess, queens on the left, kings on the right. Then just outside of them are the castles. I know they keep their castles close. Then right in the back is a pawn. That pawn. Then beyond that, we put a little row of pawns on either side to create a little 4x4 space. That would be 16 spaces. That makes just enough. Now, diagonally in front of the queen, always there's a knight. Right beside it, the black knight. So there's one on white, one on black to start. Bishops, of course, there needs to be one on black and one on white. So there you go. And you've set up your cubic chess starting position. These two are already set up. There's an extra queen in the set that can be used if you promote, which we'll get into in the rules at the end. Cubic chess is based on traditional chess. It is played by 3 opponents, each with the object of checkmating one opponent. The pieces move and capture as in traditional chess. The board represents a cube with 3 kingdoms and 3 border rows made of 5 chevron-shaped pieces. This is a chevron shape, okay? This is the central hexagon, and 1 central hexagon. All spaces, whether a diamond, a chevron, or the hexagon, are equal to 1 space. The dynamic of multiplayer chess games tends to make the best strategy a defensive one. Build a strong defense and let the other players destroy each other. So the following rules were developed mostly to encourage aggressive play. Okay, let's go through the terms. First, kingdom. Any one of the 3x5 diamond areas in which each player has their king and begins the game with their pieces. The kingdoms are designated X, Y, and Z for notation purposes. So let's say this is X, Y, Z. Generally, white goes first. In notation, we'd X first. The 5x5 space of diamonds is just like this for X, within that area for Y, and within this area for Z. They're bordered by the border row. Okay. Next, the border row. Any one of the 3 dividing rows of 5 chevron-shaped spaces and the central hexagon. These are the chevron-shaped spaces and the central hexagon. That's what we call the border row. 3. Predator and prey. Each player is predator to the player who goes after them and prey to the player who goes before. This means when a player is checkmated, the player who goes before them wins the game. And that does not matter who puts them in checkmate. The player who goes before wins. Okay, there's a short discussion of the setup here. The main thing that's discussed is simply that the queen does not set behind a bishop. If you set the queen behind a bishop, you have a very powerful opening position. Okay? If that were the case, then the king would be behind a knight with no defense from an attack such as this. Again, the object of the game is to checkmate the player who goes after you. We chose this over checkmating both players because it keeps the weakest player from being the target of both opponents. If suddenly one player became weak, it would be a race between the other 2 opponents to see which one could checkmate them first. And you would simply lose if you were the weakest opponent. Whether you were the best or the worst, it wouldn't matter. You'd be losing. So when you just have one opponent to checkmate to win the game, this changes the entire dynamic of the game. Okay? And we chose also is to make the player goes after you, because if it were the object to mate the player who goes before, the third player could spoil the mate. If I were attacking the king, trying to checkmate King Z, and I'm X, Y moves between me and Z, so they could spoil the checkmate over and over again. And we don't want that to happen. We want you to be able to decisively win the game. And then choosing who goes first, little difficult with 3 players. The easiest way, of course, would just simply be to take 2 pawns of one color, 1 pawn of another color, throw them in a bag. Whoever chooses the red pawn would go first. Okay, that covers page 1. Page 2, the pawn. Notice in your rules that each of these numbers here is represented down here. That illustration explains that particular point in the rules of pawns. Rule number 1. Just as in standard chess, pawns move and capture one space at a time. In their own kingdom, pawns move straight forward toward or onto either border row and capture diagonally forward toward or onto the closer border row. This gives pawns 2 directions to move in their own kingdom. What that means is simply a pawn in its own kingdom, within its 5x5 kingdom, a pawn has 2 directions to move, as long as there's an open space for it to move to. This pawn can move towards this border row or this border row. So it can move there on one turn, then here, or from there it could move here. Capturing only towards the closer border row. So pawn captures here or here. This pawn is not protecting this pawn. It cannot capture that way. That's the farther border row. It's determined by this middle line here. Everything on this side of the line is closer to this border row. Everything on this side of the line is closer to this border row. Number 2, a pawn may not move 2 spaces on its first move. In other words, this is where they start from, so the first move would be there. They cannot do that. Only 1 space on the first move. Number 3, if a pawn is on any one of the 5 central diamonds in its own kingdom, it may also capture forward toward or onto the central hexagon. So this one right here is on the central diamond. Also the back pawn here can move towards either border row like always, but also it can capture towards either border row. So it can capture here, here, or here. Say a few more pieces are out of the way just to explain. You're back here, back pawn can capture here. From this point you can capture here, here, or here. Cannot capture backwards though. So as long as he moves onto the central diamonds, you can capture forward, to the left or the right. Rule 4. From the border row, pawns move straight and capture diagonally forward onto their opponent's kingdoms. Pawns may also capture onto the border row that separates their opponent's kingdoms. So, once you reach the border row, now you have only one way to move. That is straight away from your own kingdom. That would be this way. This would be your opposite border. So kingdom X would begin to travel this direction, capturing here or here. From the border row, capture here or here. If you're next to this border row between your 2 kingdoms, you can capture there or there. So I could capture onto this one and then even capture into the other kingdom and then continue moving forward, capturing either way. Rule 5. From the central hexagon, a pawn moves straight forward onto the border row that separates its opponent's kingdoms and captures diagonally forward into either opponent's kingdom. So here you can capture onto the central hexagon. That's the only way to get onto the central hexagon. You can't move onto it from the border row. Once you're on the border row, the only place you can move is here. So if you capture onto the central hexagon, you may move here or capture here or here. And then continuing down this is straight away from your kingdom. You may capture here, or move here, all the way to the final row on the other side. Rule 6. Now this is a very important rule for cubic chess. A pawn may be promoted, exchanged, upon reaching the first row beyond the border row, but only for a piece that player has lost in an opponent's kingdom or on the central hex or a border row. Okay, so it's very important to understand that a piece lost in its own kingdom is not available to be returned, to be exchanged for on the border row. Instead, whoever takes the piece in a player's own kingdom keeps it. But if I lose a piece on the border row or the central hexagon or in an opponent's kingdom, it is returned to me, the owner of that piece. If you lose a piece beyond your own kingdom, it's returned to you. If you lose a piece within your own kingdom, it's held by the person who took it. The reason for this is because the pawns can then exchange for pieces that you've lost outside of your own kingdom simply by moving one step beyond the border row and promoting to any one of those pieces. Let's say you lost, you know, a rook, a bishop, a knight, and your opponent's queen's right there. So you move here and you decide to get a bishop because it's covered and it's now attacking your opponent's queen. Rule 7. A pawn may be promoted on any turn it is in an opponent's kingdom. Simply move it forward one space and replace it with any piece lost in an opponent's kingdom or on a border row. So, if you don't promote here, perhaps it's covered and you don't want to lose the piece, you may on a subsequent turn move another one forward and promote it to whatever piece you have lost during the game. So if I'm here, I move to here, I can promote. If I'm here, the same thing. I can move to here, promote. All the way down the board, as long as the pawn remains. Of course, the pawn is taken off the board, so it can only promote to one piece, but you can choose when, as long as you can get the piece there. Rule 8. Upon reaching the last row opposite its kingdom, it may be promoted for any piece desired. So, when you get down here, you can promote. That's why you have a second queen in the set. You can promote to any piece, not just pieces you've lost. So, then that gives you a great advantage at the end of the game. If you can get down to the end game, a lot of times you'll see this, king accompanying a pawn. It's all they have left. Suddenly you have a king and a queen. Now you can actually effect a checkmate. The knight. Just as in standard chess, a knight moves and captures one laterally and one diagonally, away from its position. Some players envision an L-shaped move. Either way, when moving around the central hexagon, it becomes a straight line. So you've got some moves here. Moves to here, moves to here, to here, to here, to here, to here. Also here or here. You can see it as one straight, one diagonal, one straight diagonal, or as an L shape. Let's say you're on a border row. From this point, this knight could move here, 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 or here. Just like in regular chess, 8 spaces. But when you get on the central hexagon, you only have 6 places to move to. Here, 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 or here. If you're next to the central hexagon, that L shape becomes like so, or like so, or one diagonal and one straight. Now that seems a little funny, but diagonal, what I've called lateral, simply means straight and parallel lines with the squares, with the diamonds. So if you're here, move around like that. That's about it for the knight. It captures regularly, just like in regular chess. The bishop moves and captures diagonally. It may move and capture across border rows. Moving diagonally across the border rows means crossing opposite corners of the border row space. The bishop must stop on the central hexagon. And this is an important rule. Let me just discuss that a second. The central hexagon has to be stopped on by these pieces, queen, knight, or rook. They're the long-range pieces. The knight doesn't have to, because he can simply go around it. You couldn't make him stop on it. All of them must stop when they get here. They cannot continue on. And the reason for that is it affords protection for each of the kingdoms and makes the game, it requires that the game be diversified outward from the center. If you could pass through the central hexagon would be a very important place to take on the board and would stop the diversification of possible strategies. So I voted it out. So let's say I have a black bishop. He can move to here, he has to stop. Then he can move here or there. On this line, he can move all the way to here, all the way to there, onto the central hexagon. Let's say he's over here. He can move all the way back, up to the central hexagon, there, all the way to there. Here, from there to there, or here, or again to the central hexagon. The way to properly see a bishop move is that it moves across the border rows in the more obtuse angle as opposed to the more acute angle. This is incorrect, acute. Correct, obtuse. The more obtuse angle. In other words, just like on a regular chessboard, your bishop can't move like this. In cubic chess, it can't do that either. So it cannot do this on the border rows. It goes like this. And it can travel quite far, as you can see. Imagine if you have a bishop here, it actually can travel down both of these. Let's say your opponent's here, he has a king in the middle, you've got these 4 squares covered with this one white bishop. So it can be quite powerful. It captures the same as in regular chess. That's about it for the bishop. The castle. The castle moves and captures orthogonally. That would be the same thing as laterally. It may move and capture across border rows, but must stop on the central hexagon. So, it can move like this. Imagine it bending around the edge of a cube and continuing on the same line. As if the whole cube were wrapped with a band, the castle is simply traveling on it. From this point, you can only go to here, like so. But from this point, this is not a legal move. Okay, sometimes people envision it. Oh, I can go around that corner. No, that's not really a corner. That would be just like if you were here and you went like, if you went like this. That would not be a legal move. So on the border row, the castle moves like so, has to stop on the central hexagon. Like so, to so. So from here, this castle could move to there, to there, to here, or to here. And he captures just as in regular chess. The queen moves exactly like either the castle or the bishop. Captures, that's all you really need to know. The queen moves and captures diagonally and orthogonally, just like the bishop or castle. The queen must stop on the central hexagon. The king. The king moves and captures one space in any direction. The king may not move onto any border row or the central hexagon if it is in check. Okay, so king is here. He could move to any one of the any one of the diamonds that are around him. Very simple. Back here, it's got these three. If he's against the central hexagon, if he's not in check, or if he's against the border row anywhere, if he's not in check, he can move on to the border row. This allows him to accompany a pawn. Let's say everything else is wiped out. He can go ahead and accompany the pawn down the board, as you saw in the illustration of the pawn. But if he's put in check, he may not. This, as it says, this allows players to use border rows to more easily make a checkmate, at the same time allowing a king to be used to accompany a pawn to promotion. Okay, castling or master of the horse. The king may trade places with the pawn on space 1, the back corner, as long as the king is in its original place and the pawn has not moved. It may not trade while in check, or if the trade would put it in check. So, a normal castle, of course, is a king and a castle trade places. In normal chess, of course, they are a distance apart, and so you do like so. But in cubic chess, that would simply put your king to the outside, more vulnerable, not less. Not a good move, pretty worthless. So your castle can go out and do its work. And this little fellow back here is called the master of the horse. Now, in Roman times, the master of the horse would take the place of the emperor at the end of his reign. And that's as long as the king is in its original position. You could have moved the king around, that's fine, but the king has to be back in its original position in order for the master of the horse move to be acceptable. The reason that we allow for the moving of the king around is if you're not notating the game, there won't be any argument about, oh, you moved your king, you moved it back. So, it gives you that option. Check and checkmate. The king may be put in check by either player and checkmated by either player, or a combination of both of them. However, the winner of the game is the player who goes before the mated player. The third player also loses. The player may not remain in check. Okay, first, the object of the game, as stated in the first page of the rules, is for X to checkmate Y, Y to checkmate Z, and Z to checkmate X. However, that would be a checkmate, but a wrong checkmate, as you'll see in the next section on bungled mate. So anyone can put either player in check. Either way, it's a check. Say they're there, the queen could put both of these in check at the same time. From here, here, wherever. From right here also. Both of these players are in check by this queen. However, the king may not move into check. The king, you might say, well, this is not the player supposed to put me in check, and I want to get out of a sticky situation here, so I'll move there. You know, you might say, well, player Y would be fine with me jumping into check here because I can challenge player Z's piece that's checked me, and player Y might like that idea. However, that's not a legitimate move. Player Z is using player Y to help put you in check, and this helps at the end of the game. Whenever you don't have a lot of pieces on the board and you're chasing each other around, you have to be careful not to put the wrong guy in check and help your opponent win the game. That's just a really bad idea. So that's also covered again in the next section, but it's really important to understand. As you can see, what I've just done there is, let's say you move here and put player Z in check, and player Y just takes nice advantage of that and goes ahead with the mate, and you've lost. So that'll also be covered again in bungled mate, the next section. Okay, bungled mate. If upon their turn a player is in checkmate and one or more of the pieces that are directly checking the king belong to that player's prey, this means the third party has a piece or pieces that could take the king in its current position. This does not include any piece attacking a square that the king could move to. Then the prey, the third party, suffers a double loss. So let's just say this queen belongs to Kingdom Y. Kingdom Y is your prey. Kingdom Y does not want to put you into checkmate. However, Kingdom Y does this. Okay? Now it's Kingdom Z's turn. Z, who's here, puts you into checkmate. There's no place you can move, no way you can get out of it, and Kingdom Y has a piece directly checking your king. Kingdom Y suffers a double loss. Kingdom Z is the winner. On the other hand, this would not be a bungled mate. Let's say Kingdom Y moves here. Kingdom Z takes advantage of it and moves here. You're now in checkmate. However, Kingdom Y has not got you directly in its line of sight. You would have to move in order to be checkmated by Kingdom Y. So Kingdom Y does not lose on this, does not have a double loss, doesn't suffer a bungled mate. You, though, however, do lose. Kingdom Z is the winner. Kingdom X and Y both lose. Okay, challenge loss. If a player makes a move that would cause them to lose before their next turn, their prey may challenge it. The challenger must show that a move by the challenged player is available that would continue the game. Then that player must make that move or another that would keep them in the game. The challenger may wait until their turn to challenge. In this case, the third player would have to retract their last winning move. So, let's say X, Y, Z. It is now Y's turn. Y puts Z in check. Z moves here. X can't do anything about it. He can move there, he can do whatever he wants. He is not going to be able to stop a checkmate. In the next turn, Y moves there, it's checkmate to Z. But let's replay that. It isn't important that they're exactly the same. Y moves here. Z's turn. Z could move there. Then when it's Y's turn again, after X's, whatever they do, doesn't matter. Y could put Z in check but not mate. So this means that if Z makes this move, X doesn't lose. Whereas if Z makes this move, X also loses. So X has the right to challenge that move, only on the move that would put them into checkmate. They can either challenge it before when Y attacks, Z's response, X at this point can say, hang on Z, that's checkmate in the next move, see this? I'm not going to allow that, you need to move here. And Z has to move there, okay? But they may also wait, because what if, you know, they move, they make a move, they're heading towards trying to make some kind of a checkmate themselves, And so then it's White's turn. They make some different move. Okay? Therefore, they might wait because it might be to their advantage to wait. But if it does come down to this situation, X can challenge it at this point. When he says checkmate, X can say, no, hold on a minute, there was a move. Go back one, go back one. Now, Z, you have to move here because it'll keep you out of checkmate. You don't have the right to put yourself in checkmate whenever you can get out of it, because you cause your prey also to lose. So your prey has the right to challenge it. Resignation. Forced and voluntary. A player must resign if they possess only their king and one knight, or one bishop, or one castle. In such case of a forced resignation, the predator wins. The player may continue in the game if they possess only a king and a pawn, or a king and a queen. This is because they still have the power to checkmate their prey. If a player resigns before they are forced to, then their prey may contend for the win. They do so by challenging the predator of the one who resigned to a match. The predator then chooses to play a game of regular chess, or continue by removing all pieces of the resigning player and playing out the game against the prey of the resigning player. Note that the above rules mean that a player can win by taking their prey's last or second to last piece. Further, they could do it even if the piece they take is defended, because the game would end on that turn. So, if this is all that White has left, has to resign. Cannot force a checkmate, therefore he loses. And of course, the predator, the player who goes before, is the winner. The prey also loses. So, if the person who resigns has enough pieces left to win the game, possibly, then his prey would end up just losing. The prey may say, no, wait a minute, I'm the guy who should win this game, so I challenge the predator to a playoff. And either at that point the pieces of the resigning player are removed from the game, the predator and prey play out the game using all the whole area until a checkmate is effective, and whoever gets the checkmate wins the game. It can also be chosen by the predator at his behest to either play on the cubic chess board or to start a new game in which the sides are chosen by chance, and the predator and prey play out the game on a regular chessboard. Notation. The cubic notation has a letter to indicate kingdom and number for location. The logic is your kingdom's numbers start on the back corner and progress toward the right border. Okay, this is your back corner if you're kingdom X. Right border. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The border row between you and your following opponent is lettered as your kingdom to make notation as simple as possible, although your kingdom doesn't technically include any border row spaces. So this right here is lettered within your space. So this belongs to kingdom X. This space is kingdom Y. This space is kingdom Z. The only space not covered is the central hexagon. And it says right here, H stands for the central hexagon. With each row having 5 numbers, it's easy to visualize where a piece will be, and counting by 5s lines up the numbers in successive rows in alternating digits. Okay, I can take this, put it down, don't need to look at it. Let's say X13. That square right there. 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. All odd numbers, black. All even numbers, white. Another easy way to think of it, let's say this is 3. 3 and 5 is 8, and 5, 13, 18, 23, 28, 29, 30. That's your last number, X30. So it's quite easy to envision where a piece is on the board. Of course, count them up too. So not difficult. If somebody sends you some notation to figure out where the pieces are on the board, and it's simply, the notation simply has 3 moves instead of 2 per turn. And again, note, the hexagon board design is a trademark of Cubic Games. So this is our trademark. Please don't use it without our permission, but you may spread the word all you want. If you're not selling it, we're fine with that. Thank you.